Good afternoon. My name is Brooks Fail from the class of 1988. Shout out to our 88s here at our 35th. And I have I have the honor of serving Williams as Executive Director of Alumni Relations. On behalf of all of us in Williamstown, I offer you a warm welcome home and thank you for making the effort to be here this weekend to connect with classmates, friends, and your college. One of the many privileges of my job is to work closely with today's speakers and see firsthand their commitment and dedication to Williams. By way of introduction, let me say a little bit about each. Brent Shea, class of 1978, is not only here celebrating his 45th reunion, but he is also president of our Society of Alumni. It's a role he's held the past year and will do so until this time next year when he'll pass the baton to Funmi Olasunde, class of 2006. Brent's dedication to Williams is second to none and spans the entirety of his alumni experience. He is motivated by a desire to keep fellow EIFs connected to each other and their college. Brent is an open sounding board and positive advocate for all, and our alumni community has been the beneficiary of his efforts. Please join me in welcoming and thanking Brent. It is my pleasure to introduce the 18th president of Williams, Maud S. Mandel. Maud's reputation as a leader in higher education precedes her current role. A graduate of Oberlin College and the University of Michigan, she built an exceptional legacy over 2 decades at Brown University, having served on the faculty since 2001 and later as dean of the college. During her Williams tenure, Maud has engaged our community in articulating a vision for the college's future through a strategic planning effort involving faculty, staff, students, alumni, families, and friends. She has advanced educational work at Williams from major grants to important conversations about the role of technology and the creative arts in a liberal arts education. In addition, she has encouraged a culture of shared, community-wide responsibility for diversity, equity, and inclusion work, and continued Williams's investment in the sustainability of its built environment. President Mandel is also an accomplished historian whose scholarship looks at how policies and practices of inclusion and exclusion in 20th century France have affected Jews, Armenians, and Muslim North Africans, among other minorities. In addition to her presidential duties, President Mandel holds the title of Professor of History and teaches as her schedule allows. Please join me in welcoming President Maud S. Mandel. So before turning the stage over to Maud and Brent, we thought we'd offer a reminder of why we're all here. Just 5 days ago, we welcomed the class of 2023 to the alumni ranks. Here are some of the sights and sounds from this year's commencement.
Order.
The meeting will come to order.
On behalf of the college, I'd like to open these ceremonies by extending a warm welcome to all of you, students, families, friends, and distinguished guests.
Williams is imperfect, so it might just have been the perfect place for us to start our adult lives.
I like to share what my friends often say. Keep on living, laughing, and loving class of 2023. Congratulations.
As we leave Williams, let us embrace the contradiction that we should be hungry and foolish critical thinkers. Let us think as critically as we should and no more than that. Thank you.
You have the power to choose hope over despair, unity over division, and progress over stagnation. You have the power to make a difference. The world is waiting for you. Congratulations and good luck on your journey.
By virtue of the authority vested in me by the Board of Trustees, I confer upon you the degree of Bachelor of Arts, entitled to all the rights, honors, and privileges appertaining here thereto. Congratulations.
Good afternoon, everyone, and let me offer a big welcome on behalf of the Society of Alumni. It's nice to see a packed house on this rainy afternoon. I think you'll find at reunion weekends we get every type of weather except for snow. Hopefully, fingers crossed.
Saw the climate panel.
It's also an honor and pleasure to be with you, Maud. Thank you for joining us this afternoon for what I hope will be a lively conversation and a good chance for folks in the room to ask questions. Maud likes asking and answer questions as opposed to lectures, so this is a format we've done a lot of right now. It's good to be here in Williamstown. We're very fortunate to be in person for reunions after that awful COVID lockdown period. And for me, it's particularly great to be here for my 45th reunion with all my lifelong friends. So, thank you all. So with this weekend, we've had so many opportunities for connection, never mind learning, but chances to engage all over campus with what's happening and what's been happening while we've been tucked away in our respective corners of the world. As you saw from this video that we've just seen, I had the honor of taking part in last week's commencement, and the spirit and energy of celebration really set the tone for our reunion weekend. The themes of kindness, community, reflection were both inspiring and reassuring. Maud, I know sometimes we call this the purple bubble, but given all I've heard from our newest graduates who've been through quite a lot during their Williams tenures, largely due to the COVID lockdown, I think we're going to be okay. So the format that we have this afternoon is pretty straightforward. Maud and I will chat about 40 minutes or so, and then we'll open it up for questions for the next 15 to 20 minutes for Q&A. So I've done a little homework here in Williams, and I have a few questions that I'm going to ask. I think they'll be familiar. And so the first one is about Williams today. As many of my classmates out there and I were in touch leading up to reunion week, and one of the questions I heard most often was, what are Williams students like today? So here at the close of your 5th academic year, can you share some reflections on that question, Maud?
Thank you so much. Thank you for everything you do and for all the celebrations we've done together. And thanks to everyone here for being here. It's wonderful to see everybody. So the question of what are Williams students like today? So the first thing I would like to say and answer that question is it's sort of impossible to answer. We are a truly diverse campus. So one of the ways in which we characterize a Williams student today is that that person is not like the person next to them. There is such a wide range of diversity, socioeconomic, racial, religious, geographic, domestic, international. It is a really a place that brings people together across great difference, and that's one of the things that I think is really notable and remarkable. But if there are things that connect the generation over some of these differences, I would say, for starters, there is so you mentioned the pandemic as one of the things they've all been dealing with. They are digital natives. They were before the pandemic, but then the pandemic made them all the more so. So this is a generation of students who is fluent in a kind of technological fluency with technology that many of their elders don't have or came to late in life. So it's a different kind of experience, and of course they were all very dramatically affected by COVID. In addition, I think something else that is quite notable about them, which I think probably links them to the long history of Williams students, many of whom are in this room, they're really hard workers. They are intellectually vigorous and creative, but they're also really good at applying that vigor and rigor to their work. And by work, I would define that broadly. Their academic work, their athletic work, their creative work, their engagement work, their community building work, sort of what they do hard. And that seems to be actually, I think, again, very consistent across the student body. I had a really great experience. I might have told you a little bit about it earlier this year, that over spring break I had the opportunity to go with a group of Williams students on a service trip to the bottom of the Grand Canyon. So we have the head of our outing club, Scott Lewis, has been taking Williams students since the 90s during spring break down on a service trip into the Grand Canyon. And they spend the week there clearing trails. They work very hard, actually. That work ethic is really what this trip is about. And I'm not sure, I wanted to go because I just wanted to go to the Grand Canyon, let's be honest. But I didn't know what to expect in terms of spending a few days down there with Williams students. And I think actually, in retrospect, I thought, this is going to be a group of friends that signed up to go to the Grand Canyon, and they're going to do a little work, and but they're excited to go to the Grand Canyon, and it'll be a kind of coherent group, and Scott and me, and I had another colleague who was with us as well. But actually, the group of students that went was a hugely diverse group of students. They were all classes. There were international students and domestic students. There were students of broad academic sort of interests, ranging from seniors to first-year students, men, women. I mean, it was really just a really diverse group. And what I noticed about them, having spent a few days with them, it took them a little bit of time to get used to the fact I was there. But once they got used to that, actually, and this is going to be the last answer I have to what characterizes contemporary Williams students, they were just incredibly nice. They were, and I've shared this story a few times to say that I had this moment in the canyon when we were all sitting around playing Scrabble, which I won, by the way, just saying. You can tell that to other people if you want. But I had a moment of feeling this incredible gratitude to the admissions office, because here I was with essentially a cross-selection of Williams students, and the main thing I thought about them was, like, if you got to be in a place with no digital connection with a bunch of strangers for a week, these are people I want to be with. I think it spoke very well of them. I mean, because they were so incredibly nice to each other also, which was really noteworthy. So it's a good story of what Williams is today, I think.
That's great, thank you. We're just moving from Williams today to teaching. It seems. Oh, sorry. Here we go. Teaching. Teaching seems to be a key element in the secret sauce of why we all love Williams so much. And it's heartwarming to hear that our president remains teacher-in-chief at Williams and a professor of history, right, Matt? So you're actually in the classroom with students. So I wanted to know, and the college remains focused on excellence in teaching And of course, the world is changing rapidly. We know that we live with artificial intelligence. We've heard Chat GPT, I have to practice that. And we also live in a world where Zoom calls are just standard and part of life. So could you share a bit about faculty and students, how they're adapting to technological changes and any other changes that may affect teaching?
I'm so glad you asked that question. It so goes to the heart of what we do here. So the number one thing that Marks Williams is distinctive among its peers is the faculty-to-student ratio and the close hands-on learning that happens here in our tutorial system and in the classroom, where we have small, high-touch professor-student engagement. And that, sort of traditionally here has been known as Mark Hopkins and the log. That's kind of that is the story we tell of Williams. It's still a really true characterization of the institution. I would add that the teachers here go beyond the faculty. We have staff, educators, and athletic coaches. We have alumni who teach in winter studies. So there's all kinds of people who sit on the other end of the log. But the important part is that teacher-student relationship that has characterized this place for a long time and continues really to mark it as special. One little side note that I'd like to share, he'll probably kill me for sharing this story, but we actually have a new faculty member on the campus whose name is, of all things, Mark Hopkins. I've told him he has no choice but to prepare for a life as a college president. So he's quite young still, but sorry, Mark, if you're out there. It is, so we're literally recreating the Mark Hopkins and the log here at Williams today. But it is really true, taking all jokes aside, that culture of education is the same. What has changed, you've referred to, so the curriculum changes every year. We heard about the development in the last session, if you were in here, of a major in Africana study in the Department of Africana. We have an Asian American, new concentration in Asian American studies. We have a growing statistics department, computer science. We have expanding technology in so many fields that affect the curriculum. So that continues to change, which means we need not only faculty there to represent the ever-evolving nature of the curriculum, of course, but also evolving skills. And one of the things that I really find remarkable about Williams since I've been here, and I say this after 20 years at another institution where, I think we believed very deeply in our teaching and our engagement with students. But the faculty here are absolutely dedicated educators. And it's quite moving, actually, to see them at work. And I happen to sit on the committee that reviews tenure and promotions, and so I see the careful care that goes into not only what faculty do in the classroom, but how they are mentored by their more senior colleagues, and the way in which education is a craft that is continually refreshed in today's environment. We have a new center here, the Rice Center at Williams, which is a center for teaching, and it is a center that is been established thanks to the generosity of one of our alum to support teachers, educators, faculty in honing their craft, even so they come here as excellent teachers, of course. We wouldn't hire them if they weren't. But it is teaching, like any skill, is something you continue to get better at in your career. You cannot stand still. There's new technology, as you notice. There are new approaches. There are lessons to be learned from students, from colleagues, from experts who study teaching and learning. And so the center is an environment where faculty can continue to hone that craft. The idea for the center came from faculty themselves out of our strategic planning process, talking about ways in which they would like to be able to work with each other to continue to growing and learning in that way. So it is with great confidence that I can say, as new challenges come up, and there are some, such as ChatGPT and other things, that faculty actually are quite, they are themselves lifelong learners. They went to liberal arts colleges, many of them. They spend their lives as scholars, as educators, as researchers, and one of the things they are doing is consistently learning how to engage with the the ever-evolving realities of our student body, of the society in which we live, of their fields, and of the various technologies and other kinds of things that can shape the classroom experience. So, so I think Williams is well positioned to take on those challenges and to support students in ever-evolving circumstances.
Of course, that's comforting to hear. So I want everyone to know that I get the digital version of the record. So my next question is about the curriculum. And it's from recent data that the Williams Record reported that it appears Williams is following a national trend in terms of declining interest in humanities, both in terms of majors and course content relative to science and math. So how would you say Williams is responding, and how do the arts and humanities fit into a liberal arts education today?
So I would argue, and maybe nobody would be surprised to hear me say this, that the liberal arts is still as important as ever. I might even argue more important than ever, whatever that means. But it is, it remains a kind of education that crosses over disciplinary specialization. I'm preaching to the choir here, right? But and trains people how to think outside of boundaries of specific and narrow forms of expertise. You need both. You need expertise and you need the ability to think beyond expertise, to raise new questions. That's the way you begin to challenge inherited assumptions and knowledge. So a liberal arts education, in my mind, remains the very best way to do it. It is true that more of our incoming students here and across the United States higher education environment now move into come in interested in STEM fields and often choose to majors in those areas. And that is true here. So compared to when many of you were here, there's no question that we have more students who graduate with degrees in those departments. I should note, and it is important to say, that studying STEM fields is still liberal arts, right? It's part of a liberal arts education. So let's not, I bristle sometimes at putting those against each other. And what's important to know about Williams is even as majors go up in computer science or biology, psychology, chemistry, physics, etc., students here still take a huge number of courses across the entirety of the curriculum, across the three divisions. They do that because they have to. There are requirements that actually force them to do that, but they also do it because they want to. You know, I do a little exercise. Some of you already played this game with me before. Actually, be curious, how many folks in this room majored in a STEM field? Okay, so still plenty, though not what we would see today. How many people here took art history when you were at Williams? Okay, this is my little game now. I always play it. Thank you. So I point this out to say that if I were doing this today, the balance of students who would raise their hands for a STEM major would be bigger. It would be higher. It may even be the majority. But if I asked the art history question, you would still have a very large number of hands go up. And if I expanded that to other humanities, 1 course, 2 course, 3 courses, 4, there would still be lots and lots of hands. And particularly if you define the humanities as I do, as including the humanities and the soft social sciences. So I'm a historian, which at Williams is technically in Division 2, which is technically a social science, but I can tell you, I think of the study of history as the study of the humanities. Broadly speaking, if you include those soft social sciences, we have a very, very active student engagement. And in fact, in the top 10 majors, usually either English or history is still well represented, even if it's at the bottom of the top 10 majors. The last thing I'll say, and I'll say this sort of for better or worse, many Williams students double major, and when they double major, very often they'll do something in the Division 3 and sometimes in 1 or 2. They can do both of those things and still have 12 electives. So unlike institutions where you would get a bachelor's of science where that would be 20 of your courses, here a science major is still only 10 courses, and there's a lot of room for cross-disciplinary exploration. So they do plenty of that. I said for better or worse double majors. I'm not a huge fan, actually, of double majors for lots of reasons, but in the instance of encouraging students to step out of one division, it's not a bad way to ensure that there is that interdisciplinary approach. Thank you.
excuse me, another important topic is financial aid. I know that I did, and many of my classmates had loans when we finished Williams, and we had a 10-year period to pay it back. Last year, thank you, you announced that Williams would be the first in the nation to adopt an all-grant approach to financial aid.
Thank you.
So, truly appreciate that. And but what is the impact? Has this for the first year, and what's the next step for the future?
So thanks for the question. Thanks for the acknowledgement. It was a very exciting development here at Williams to be able to build on that long history that Williams has really been at the forefront of access and affordability. And it's work that we continue to lean into. It's a great question, sort of how do you continue to create pathways for students from a diverse range of backgrounds and financial familial environments to come to Williams to get an education, because we really want any talented student who can come here to be able to come here and not have finances stand in the way. So the concept of the All Grant Initiative, just for those who missed the announcement, is that we replace dollar for dollar the parts of the financial aid package that were loans and the parts that were work study and summer earnings requirements. And all students, mostly middle income students, because our highest needs students already had most of that package. So it was our middle income students actually that mostly benefited from the All Grant initiative, although it actually benefited everybody. And the goal of the All Grant Initiative was really twofold. One was to ensure that all students, once they got to campus, could take full advantage of the opportunities that Williams offers and not have finances stand in the way of their ability to engage, whether it was study away or taking an extra class they wanted to take, or going on a field trip because they have sort of too many things that are pulling at them. So it was to even out the experience for all the students, first of all. And second of all, honestly, most of our students, and I'll come to answer your question about the impact, most of our students work. Our aided students and our non-aided students work for financial gain. They need to. The difference now is that they can use those earnings for what they need to use them for, and rather than pay them to Williams. And many of our students actually have quite a bit of financial need. And so having that ability to send that money home, which is where it's often very needed, or saved for the future, where it now doesn't have to be used to pay off loans, is a great way to even the playing field and to make sure that students don't leave with a large burden resting on their shoulders. You asked about the impact. So the first impact was very rapid and not at all surprising, which is we had a sharp reduction in families taking out loans. And that is something like at 75 to 80% drop in loans immediately. So that was really wonderful, and we've heard very positive things about that. Not particularly surprising. We also have students working fewer hours. So this is important to clarify. It's not that students stopped having jobs. I heard some people at the beginning of this say, well, isn't this downplaying the value of work? And it's really important for me to say always, no, actually, I said, how many of you had campus jobs just to make some money when you were in college, right? So did I. Working is a good thing. We learn lots of things from jobs. We want our students to work, and they work. So they need to work. Many of them, as I say, not only do they need to work while they're here, they needed to work before they came here. Many of them come from families of great need. But they've been able to reduce the hours and, as I say, keep the earnings for their own purposes, and that's been very valuable. In addition, we've seen this predates our announcement, but it's been increased over the last stretch of time. The jobs they're taking are more valuable jobs. So we're trying to channel students into jobs that teach them things, whether it's in research labs or libraries, or doing TA work, or sort of doing jobs that contribute to their education. And of course, all kinds of jobs are good jobs, and you can learn from any job. But we've seen more and more students moving over to to those interests. We're continuing to study something else that's of great interest to me, which is the other thing I was hoping out of this, which is that more students would be able to take advantage of summer internship programs with low-paying or not-for-profit organizations, rather than just trying to find the highest paid job they could over the summer so that they could pay Williams their summer earnings requirement. So we're hoping over time, it's a little too early to say this, but to see that students can pursue the internships that they want to pursue over the summer. We had a fair bit of data prior to making this move that students were turning down opportunities because they couldn't afford to take them. And so our hope over time is that that will be continuing to be true, and that we can leverage existing internship and fellowship programs for those summer opportunities. The last thing I just want to say about the All Grant initiative is it really, and it connects to your question about the future. Williams has continued to think a great deal about how to continue to expand financial aid resources for an ever diversifying student body. And one of the sort of sub-initiatives within our financial aid access and affordability work has been our focus on non-traditional students. And since I've been here, that has meant expanding the number of veterans on campus, as well as students who are coming here from community colleges. So that is to say, slightly older students who've had more life experience and who've taken circuitous paths on their way to Williams, but who have decided for whatever reason that a liberal arts education is the next important part of their journey. These students, there were 4 of them when I got here. Now we have just over 30. The goal is to eventually get to between 40 to 50. I mention them when I talk about financial aid because it's a huge investment to bring them here. They often come with spouses and children. Those children need to go into childcare. There's health insurance. There's special housing because they don't typically, necessarily, if you're 30 and have kids, want to move into, Mission. So there's a certain extra investment that Williams has to make to bring these students here, but it is so worth the investment. They bring a lifetime of experience to Williams, which is so different from our traditional student body. All great, but the non-traditional students add a certain something to classrooms and activities. They have a certain, how can I describe it? They know why they want to come. A lot of our students, for obvious reasons, at 18 years old, come to college because that's what you're supposed to do at 18 years old, and they're wonderful and smart, and they take full advantage of being here. The non-traditional students come because they're dying to get a liberal arts education. It's a different kind of student population, and it really does add something. So some of the future involves leaning into that program, continuing to build it, and in both areas to raise funds to support and endow these programs, which I hope we can forever preserve as part of the Williams tradition. Thanks.
Thank you. So all these topics are important, and my next topic is equally sensitive, and it has to do with mental health and well-being. For those of you who follow higher education in the media, a topic attracting great attention right now is student mental health and well-being. Williams has long been focused on student physical, psychological, and spiritual developments as part of the co-curriculum. But in light of national statistics on loneliness, anxiety, depression among adolescents and young adults, Maud, I was wondering if you could speak to how Williams approaches mental health and well-being in its support structures.
Yeah, sure. Thank you. So, yeah, anyone who follows national news knows that there is a mental health crisis among young people. Williams is not particular in this regard. It also hasn't escaped the challenge. We have lots and lots of students on campus, particularly throughout and after the COVID challenge, who've sought out services from what we call integrative well-being here. And Williams has a very robust series of supports in place to ensure that students, when they're here on campus, have what they need in order to take care of themselves while they're here. And that has been a commitment. It's actually grown since I've been here in light of what we've been seeing nationally and what we hear from our students about what their needs are. But I think where we're headed to continue to build on how we're thinking strategically about the problem, we really are continuing to try to think about an integrated approach to providing students with the support they need to not only live well while they're here, but to thrive after they go. We bring excellent, smart, talented, creative performers to Williams. And what we want them to get better at all the learning skills, the thinking, the writing, the reading, the analyzing of data, all of those skills, but we also want them to leave here with the resiliency to remain strong, excellent performers, even in the face of life's challenges. One way, we all know one way, all of us can do that in life, is to get support from mental health professionals. But we're also very much hoping to build into the Williams educational system a more fulsome sets of skills for students so that we can use our role as a leading liberal arts college to begin to think about how can we empower an entire generation to face some of the tremendous challenges. And so over the next couple of years, we're continuing to think about how to build a program that for incoming students that would help support and educate them in what the colleague who's developing this program likes to call sustainable excellence. That is, how do you sustain, with the emphasis more on sustainable than excellence. How do you stay strong in the face of life's challenges? And we continue to think about how to do that through the work of her program. In addition, as anybody who comes to Williams knows, one of the ways you do that at Williams is not just by nurturing the brain and the mind and sort of wellness at a therapeutic level. It's also here at Williams very much about the body, about the relationship between mind and body. We see this in our robust athletics program, our varsity program, which is such a powerful part of the Williams history. We see it in that outdoor club I talked to you about students hiking to the Grand Canyon in their free time and participating in the outdoors here, in our intramural experiences, in our dance program, and lots of ways in which students in their residential liberal arts experience are taking care of themselves both mentally but also physically. And so we also are thinking a lot about physical educations and athletic opportunities for all. This will likely include over time an overhaul to our field house. So those of you who follow Williams News closely know that we had to close the field house this March, which was sudden and unfortunate. Thanks to the generous gift of a Williams alum, we were able to move very quickly into next stages for dealing with that problem, and we're trying to move quickly, as quickly as possible. These are challenging issues, but to put up a temporary structure for our athletes. But we're also seeking to accelerate longer-term planning around the broader investment into the wider athletics program, defined broadly. So by this I mean not just for our varsity athletes, but for our whole campus that really does need access to that mind-body support for all students. And so that was always the plan. If you look at the strategic plan, we always intended to do some concerted investment into the athletics and integrative well-being side of the college. We are now, though, are going a little faster because of the challenges that came to the field house.
Sort of continuing on this, we've all been hearing and seeing a lot of financial fluctuations this year, and as you lead this college, we were wondering, how is Williams coping with the new economic environment, particularly given the economic picture is much less rosy than when you arrived in 2018, and then also when the strategic plan you're now implementing was first developed. So if you could let us know how that's going.
Thanks. So this is something I spend a lot of time thinking about. So one of the things about Williams, particularly if you sort of casually engage with it, whether you're someone who passes through from time to time, or someone who doesn't know much about Williams, but just a little bit about its reputation, one of the things one knows about Williams is it has a very big endowment relative to its undergraduate population, and that means that the endowment per student is quite high here, and that's a fact about Williams. But in some ways, it's a misleading fact, and particularly in the current environment, because the combination of the reality of the stock market for the last year plus combined, and this is the important part, with inflationary pressures in the country, means that the value of the endowment has diminished, which is noteworthy because the last time, I was sitting on the stage, or at least a little before that time, we were at all-time highs. But there are major fluctuations, and that does affect what we can do. I think what I like to explain about the endowment when I talk about it to audiences that don't live with it every day the way I do is that what we use it for is to support what we do. So that 7-to-1 faculty to student ratio, all the staff here we have to support all the programs that we have here, the mental health support we provide, the curricular programs, the athletic programs. The endowment supports that work, and it supports it at a very high level. Most peer institutions don't have a 7-to-1 student to faculty ratio because they don't have the kind of resources we have. And sidebar, I'll say we have the resources we have because of amazing alumni support over decades and very, very talented stewardship of that by college leadership over decades. So that's a gift to someone like me, and we have a lot of resources to do lots of things. But what it doesn't allow us to do, and I think this is where there's sometimes a misunderstanding, is everything. So people often say to me about anything, pick any topic, whatever your favorite topic is that you think Williams should spend money on, you have thought the thought, or somebody close to you has, well, Williams can do that. That's a rounding error for Williams. And the problem with that is if you add up all of those things, it's actually well beyond a rounding error. And so actually we can't do that. We too have to manage to a budget, and when we want to do a new thing, we usually have to raise money for it. Or we have to stop doing something else in order to fund the thing. Just sounds like family budgeting, right? You want to go on a vacation, you don't have the money, you save up the money, or you don't go on the vacation. It actually is pretty similar, even though with vastly larger amounts of money and many more complexities to how those decisions are made. So in order to reach our aspirations, to answer your question around the strategic plan, we either have to change the way we currently spend money, or we have to fundraise. And those are both things that we're doing. We are always carefully stewarding our resources to meet our needs and take care of our people, which is a huge value of this institution before I got here, and certainly since I've been here. And then to continue to reach our highest aspirations, such as that financial aid we were talking about, the new museum that we are in the process of building, which I'm happy to answer questions about if folks want to know about, but which is really core to that humanities education that we were talking about, or a new athletics facilities, for example. All of those kinds of commitments are the reason that we continue to seek support outside and beyond what the endowment provides.
Well, that's the end of my list here, but so I'm going to transition now to let you ask any questions. And I wanted to say, if you could please state your name and class and then your question. I will call on you as a courtesy to all of us, if you could project so that we make sure that we hear what your question is. And we have about 15 or so minutes to do this. So I see a hand raised right here.
My name is Sharon Tompkins. My late husband was Jim Tompkins, class of 53. And my question is sort of this thing that seems to be coming up in the news all the time about AI, and it's the positives, the negatives, the regulations, the guidelines. And I was wondering how Williams is sort of dealing with that issue, which is a scary one.
Thanks so much. So the question's about AI, the positives, the negatives, and specifically how Williams is dealing with it. So when in December, when that news hit the news, right, and took some of us by surprise. Sometimes change, you can see it coming, and sometimes it's a big surprise. That news very, very quickly, educators, administrators across higher education started to generate lots of thoughts. Those thoughts tended to fall into two categories, and it was true here at Williams too. Half of it was panic, and half of it was opportunity, right? And I would say that as we continue to steward our way through the face of this challenge, in my opinion, the goal is to lead into the opportunity and not worry about the panic so much. Students for time immemorial have had ways to cheat if they want to cheat. This ups the ease of the ability to do so, but I have to say it wasn't that hard before, to be honest. So our goal as educators, and I talked about the Rice Center before, is to continue to hone our craft as educators so that we are thinking about how to use the tool, not to run away from it or panic in the face of it, but how to use the tool to help students do even more, right? What that unlocks, the possibility of information that tool unlocks, and we're only at the beginning, really, has to be something that ultimately humans created and that humans engage with in order to take what we can do to the next level. And so it is really faculty's job, and they continue to do this in the Rice Center and other places, to think about how to do that. The best thing I read, and this is not my idea, I took it from somebody else, was it was a little bit akin to how math faculty dealt with the arrival of the calculator. You know, when it first arrived, there was this moment of panic. Wait, if you can just push some buttons, how will anybody ever learn their multiplication tables anymore, right? And it's true, it changed how we do math, but it didn't prevent us from learning. We instead use it as a tool, and now when students go take the ACT, for example, they bring a calculator with them. That's one of the things they're allowed to bring. It's not considered cheating. It is a tool that they use as they figure out and conceptualize how to solve a problem. So it's a challenge, and it's going to be more and more challenging. There's no question, but we're up to the challenge. So thank you.
Is there another question right here?
Todd Balk, class of 53, pediatrician by training, so I have a lot of concern about mental health. And your efforts to increase the level of treatment and availability of treatment is admirable. What are you doing to train the faculty and staff to recognize the problem early on before it becomes a crisis?
Thank you. So the question is regarding the mental health crisis, how do we train faculty and staff to recognize the symptoms before it becomes a crisis? So let me take a step back from training for the moment and just say one of the advantages of being in a small liberal arts college is it's a little hard to be invisible here. And so actually faculty and staff have eyes on students and in this institution in a way that isn't true in much larger places. They're not clinicians, and they would be the first to tell you, particularly faculty, that they don't actually know necessarily, nor should they know what to do and how to intervene. That's not why we hire them, and that is not their specialization. But what we do is make very clear to them what the resources are so that when they see a problem, they contact the relevant people, our integrative well-being service, but also the dean's office, the Davis Center, the chaplains, often our athletic coaches who, as interact with 40% of our student population, have very close eyes on that population. And so there's a lot of pathways in to finding students in distress. We don't find every student in distress. And actually some of our students who go into deepest distress never find their way, never manage to make it invisible to everybody but themselves. But there are a lot of tells, and we do talk to faculty. We bring the head of integrative well-being to faculty meetings, for example, to talk about what those are. We do the same in our administrative leadership group, and as ways to make sure that folks are aware of what you do when you see indications so that we can get students to the appropriate help that they need. Thank you.
I see a question in the back corner.
Eleanor Congdon, class of 88. I'm a professor at a state university, and there are a number of states where legislation is being put up against divisive ideas. What is Williams doing to counter or take in this movement that is happening in the states to try and control faculty inculcation of divisive ideas, such as the history of blacks in America?
Thank you. So I'll just repeat the question. So the question is, what is Williams doing to ensure that some of the sort of political debates around critical race theory or the history of blacks in America or many other subjects that are getting challenged in state legislators across the country, what are we doing here to ensure, I think you're asking to ensure that those challenges don't come. So I should note two things before I go deeply into the question. First, we're in Massachusetts, so we have some protection here, right? Which is not to brush the question aside. It's a really challenging time for the country around a lot of the things that you're talking about. But specifically for Williams, the politics are, at least for now, really different here. The other thing, of course, is we're a private institution, which means we have a lot more control than some of the public institutions do over our curriculum. The next thing I want to say is, you know, we believe deeply that faculty at Williams should have the freedom to teach what they want to teach in the way they want to teach it without a lot of oversight from the college, whatever it is. That is actually one of the sort of linchpins of academic freedom, and our faculty have that ability to teach in that way. So the college doesn't actually in any way either prevent or particularly encourage a specific type of engagement. What we do is ensure that we have processes for constantly refreshing the curriculum in ways that allow our faculty to bring in the cutting edge work in their field, whatever it may be. The result is specifically on the issues you raised, you know, we have really robust curriculum on a wide range of histories and religious and cultural and historical studies of difference across all kinds of dimensions here. But we also have all kinds of curriculum here, again, that we don't really police at all from the center. So what I guess my simple answer to your question is not to a very complicated topic, is that in the best higher ed institutions in this country for time in memoriam, the administration does not and should not have a say on that particular matter. And I know it's quite more complicated in other places right now, to say nothing of state legislatures. That's adds a whole nother layer of complexity.
Thank you for holding the line, because the state legislatures in, say, Ohio or Florida are turning very radical and very conservative about what can be taught. So I thank you to Williams.
A question from Debbie over here.
Debbie Floyd, class of 78, and just a little background. They didn't have a computer or information systems major here when I was a student. I have a master's in information systems back in the 80s, and people were like, what is that? But now everyone knows what it is. But my question is, what are you doing at the orientation stage or the first year student stage to identify the needs of the students, whether it be they're lacking in computer skills or whether they have mental health issues that they bring from high school or from, before they get to it. If you're doing anything orientation-wise.
Thanks let me make sure I understand the question. The question is, at the orientation stage before they get here, how do we sort of onboard them to make sure they have the skills they need to be successful when they're here, whether it's, on the range, sort of from mental health to computer skills, basic background before they get here. Yeah, okay, thanks. So actually, it's a great question. We take only excellent students at Williams, but those excellent students come from a wide range of high schools and learning communities before they get here, which means that the playing field isn't even. We can have valedictorians from schools that didn't offer calculus, right? So access to computer skills, access actually to even the idea, this goes back to your question earlier, back to the idea that it's okay to seek mental health support. some percentage of our students would consider that completely not okay, right? That they come from cultures or backgrounds or families where that is not okay. So actually there is work to be done very often in first-generation student families, again, folks that come from under-resourced schools, to help navigate the difference of coming to an institution like this. We do that in several ways. We do have a summer pre-orientation program for students from historically underrepresented groups, which is for a small number of our incoming student population, but that is actually seeks to do just that, to sort of give an onboarding experience to the college experience, which fills in some of the gaps that might not otherwise have been filled in from previous life experiences, and that help those students to navigate the college. Higher ed studies suggest that students do better and graduate in higher numbers if they go through college in a cohort. And so that's a cohort program that it's partly why athletes do very well at Williams, actually, right? They have a learning cohort. It's a team learning cohort, but it's a cohort. Likewise, the summer humanities and science program is a cohort program to help students bridge the gaps of the kind you're talking about. We also have an incredibly long orientation program here at Williams, longer than most of our peers, arguably too long. But it is, and I say that because students actually say to me sometimes, God, I'm so glad classes are finally starting. It's very long. But during that process, we do introduce them to the services and supports and offices and people who are here to help them on their way through. This seems to be a theme today, so I'm just going to say it again. I hope it's something you're very proud of. It's just a truth about Williams. We have a lot of grown-ups here per student, if you add the faculty and staff. So it is one of the things that's distinctive about this place. If you know to ask for help, there's a lot of help you can get, whether it's in mental health or computer skills. Those are really different, but in both places, we have ample support. One of the problems we face, and it again goes back to your question, is what happens if somebody doesn't know to ask for help? Some of those pre-orientation programs are geared to that, our orientation programs, but still that can be a challenge, right? How do you get people to the services they need before it's an emergency? And that could be mental health, but it could also be tutoring, right? Like do you even know it's okay to ask for a tutor? I had a student say to me recently that he didn't know what an office hour was when he came to Williams, right? So we have those kids of professors, like my kids, they know what office hours are. My daughter told my husband and me earlier this year that she would go see her chemistry professor at college and no other kid would show up, so she would stay for the entire hour of office hours, because why not? Like, there was the professor, and he was there happily helping her, and she did really, 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 really well in that class. But she knows to ask, and she sees no shame in asking. She understands that's how you succeed. That's a very powerful thing, and we definitely have students here who don't know that. If I could, but by the way, I always do say this at orientation, but if I could get that one point in, that it's not a shame to ask for help, it's not embarrassing not to know, that is a powerful lesson that we just keep having to inculcate over and over.
Well, I think we have time for just two more questions, and I know I haven't called anyone upstairs, so maybe someone right there.
Sure. Charlie Sellers, class 13. Former JA, question about JAs. Since I graduated, it seems like there have been a lot of substantial changes to the JA program. So I'm curious your perspective on the evolution of that, where you think it's going, and the role that JAs will continue to play in the lives of students.
Thank you. Great question. So the question was about the JA program and how there have been a lot of changes to it. What is the impact of those changes, and what is its future? So the JA program is one of the great things about Williams. I must say, love when I get together with alumni and they say things like, "Oh, I just had a Zoom with my entry," 30 years out or something. It's quite a powerful part of the Williams infrastructure. It is distinctive without being entirely different, right? So other schools have residential undergraduates who are hired to work in the dorms. So in a sense, it's similar, but the ethos here is one of more of a kind of big brother, big sister, or a mentor, or somebody who is there to help and support you more than, say, an employee of the college. With that said, the program has evolved over years, and there are lots of reasons why that's the case. The first is students advocated very heavily for compensation, which actually former JAs thought wasn't such a great idea. Current JAs thought former JAs were wrong. And they also thought the administration was wrong. We said, wait, we don't want to pay you. Their argument, and it wasn't a terrible argument, is that, which is why we ultimately conceded, is first of all, the job has shifted over time, and it goes actually to a little bit of the prior questions. The student body is a vastly more diverse place. They come with different kinds of challenges as a result than has been true. And nationwide, there are different kinds of challenges. The mental health crisis in our country for young people means that JAs carry a different kind of burden on the ground. Who are the first responders? Often it's not faculty or staff, it's other students. So that was one issue. The second issue was we have a very diverse student body. We want a very diverse JA body, and particularly before we did away with our financial aid program the way we had it, students needed paying jobs in order to pay Williams for the right to be here, right? I mean, one of the circularities about work-study. But even having done away with work-study, the students need to work. Many of our students need actual income. And so they were finding they had to trade off, either be a JA or get a job, and if you're in that situation, you're going to immediately create a structural gap among those who can afford to be a JA and those who can't. So that was one of the other big changes. I would like to assure those of you who love the program that we built in a lot of safeguards, not actually to turn them into college employees, which I think would have changed. So we think of this more as a stipend for the work rather than a paycheck, and really left a lot of autonomy in the hands of the students to be advocates for their entries rather than people who report to me, so therefore I get to tell them what to do, which is what employees, well, that's not actually what employees do, especially not here, I gotta say. But at least in theory, an employee who reports to the college is somebody who's accountable to the college. So we tried hard to navigate that, thread that needle. The desire to be a JA waxes and wanes, and that's one of the challenges I think that we continue to grapple with. But there's still every year a robust group that really loves to do this work, and I think gets more out of it than almost anything they do at Williams. So thank you.
So is there a final question on Hyde?
Yes.
Yes, Sharon.
Hi, Brent. I'm Sharon Kiernan, class of 78. I have a comment and a question. One is that you clearly have a very committed alumni population here. And when you talk about diversity of ideas, diversity of backgrounds, diversity of age, race, sex, we represent all of that. And I would hope that in the future, given that the pandemic has taught us that remote learning can occur, that there might be some way to include the alumni in the remote learning. That's just a comment. But my real question is, you talked about cohorts of people, and we all do know that if you have a cohort during your college years, then you are more likely to be successful. Some of us marry them, some of us will be friends forever.
Very powerful cohort.
But importantly, many of us made our friends, and I was reminded of this today as we hiked up behind Clark Art, with the people we were put into the house with that we were in for 3 years. How does the housing system work now? Because I know for me, that was quite a support. When my daughter came here 25 years later, the housing system was very different and not as much of a support. How do you work it now?
Okay, so just first a response. So the comment was, given what we know about remote, given our very enthusiastic and engaged alumni body and what we know about remote, so there are ways to build increasing opportunities for alumni to teach Williams students. So I'm going to say two sort of contradictory things to that. On the one hand, I want to note that we have doubled down on the residential liberal arts college in-person part of our education. So actually, faculty are required to teach in person. It's true, we got through that experience, but I think what is special and important about Williams is that in-classroom, in-person experience. Having said that, I actually do agree with what you've said about what alumni have to offer and what the remote platform offers us in particular circumstances. And we do continue to think about winter study and ways to continue its significance for Williams, but to play with its form. Who teaches, what the length of those courses are, what the platforms are. I would say we're in early days. It was in our strategic plan to take that on, and we have started. It's a kind of a slow process of faculty governance working through what it would take to really make concrete transformations to that program that would allow the kind of thing you're talking about even more fulsomely. But
allow us to attend as students because we provide a different perspective.
So the problem with that, I hear that. The problem with that is we really do, as I say, we don't want to create an environment where our faculty think they should be teaching remotely, and to allow alumni to take classes here remotely means we'd have to offer that feed, and once we offer that feed, it provides a different set of circumstances for the faculty. So really, I think there are schools that do that. I celebrate those schools. There's lots of diversities of approach to education. To me, it is vitally important that Williams remains an in-person, in-classroom teaching experience. I believe that very deeply. In answer to your second question, housing at Williams, yes. So housing, much like the JA system, I should just say that one of the things about any institution, but I'll say institutions of higher education, is they change over time. And every aspect of them change over time. And if they didn't, that would be actually very bad news. Because in fact, it is their evolution that keeps them up with the times and relevant to a changing demographic and student body that itself is changing as the world changes. And so lots of things change. The way we eat, the way we teach in our classes, the way we live, the activities, the curriculum. There's really, there's some core things that always stay the same, but around that, a lot changes. And one of the things that's changed over time is the way students live on campus. And I don't even know well enough. I'm not even sure I could tell you well enough how that has evolved over the era. Although I can tell you things like you all have told me about sort of fraternities first, and then what fraternities became, and then different residential living opportunities. The way we use mission now is not the way we used mission 25 years ago, et cetera. So this evolves, which just means that anything I say now won't be true 10 years from now. It's just a consistently evolving reality that reflects what students tell us they want and need. So students do still pick into housing with friend groups. That's the core sort of mechanism through which students find housing at Williams after their first year, not the entry system, but after the entry system. And that really continues to be true. How big a group is, what other things shape the living situation which they're in has evolved over time. And it would be hard for me to pinpoint one specific way that that's changed, but it has definitely changed since the period that you've been here. And I'm sure we'll continue to do so. So thank you.
All right, I think that's it. Thank you all for taking your time during your reunion to come join us. And Maud, we covered an incredible array of topics, and I applaud you for your ability to jump from one to the other. So Williams has been at this education business since 1793, and we are very fortunate to have you as our leader at this stage of our history. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Thanks, everybody.